Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It is Monday. Welcome to today's live stream. Thanks for joining me today. 39 stories to get through today. Let's start with the top of the news here. So China's Xi Jinping calls for the Strait of Hormuz to be open, but just a few weeks ago, Russia and China vetoed a UN resolution calling for that exact thing. So has China changed its tune? Well, the only thing different here is now that the United States is blocking or is blockading Iranian ports, now all of a sudden the Chinese communists want the straits to be open, but they didn't care before. So that's a kind of a serious development. Also, what we're looking at today is well, there are a few things, but the Iranian government is now considered a military junta. A civilian government, although they're saying there's a civilian government, there really isn't one. We have to be concerned about that, obviously, because the IRGC is full of hardliners and they don't want to negotiate. They're not interested in negotiate, nor is that their job to negotiate. They're head of the military. So, of course, they don't want to negotiate. So we're going to see what's happening within the next few days here. Apparently, there's supposed to be more peace talks in Pakistan tomorrow, but the Iranians at least publicly said that they weren't going to attend. So without further ado, let's get into the headlines for today. April 20th, Monday. All right, we're going to start out with Zero Hedge. Xi urges immediate opening of the Hormuz Strait for first time in call with Saudi prince. China's President Xi Jinping on Monday demanded the uninterrupted passage of vessels through the Strait of Hormuz in a phone call with the Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He urged the normalization of shipping traffic after about 50 days of disruption, which obviously and significantly impacts Chinese oil imports. You're going to have to forgive me this morning. It is Monday, and I didn't get enough sleep, and I didn't get enough coffee this morning, so bear with me. I was thinking about what to do, what possibly I could do to revive myself before I started the live stream today, so bear with me in any, obviously, that technical snafus that one was me. That one was me. So, going back to the story here, normal navigation through the Strait of Hormuz should be maintained. This is in the shared interest of regional countries and international communities, Xi said. And he also called for immediate comprehensive ceasefire. There is a ceasefire. And there's a ceasefire going on, and it's just the disputes be resolved through political and diplomatic means, which we're trying to do right now. But the Iranian military has kind of hijacked the talks here. He added that China will deepen strategic mutual trust with Saudi Arabia and expand practical cooperation. South China Morning Post observes that it was the first time the Chinese leader had called for the reopening of the strategically vital waterway, which has been repeatedly blockaded since U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran began on February 28th. Indeed, China imported about 5.86 million tons of crude from Saudi Arabia, down 10% from February, according to the customs data release. They're also trying to, because Saudi Arabia is a strategic ally with the Trump administration, and they know that, so they want to try to, wedge themselves in there. They'd like to have a better relationship with Saudi Arabia and actually usurp American dominance in that country, particularly since Trump held MBS, helped him perpetrate a prince coup, a palace coup, so to speak, that put him in power um, before the demise, or I don't even know, is King Fahd even dead? The aging leader of Saudi Arabia is incapacitated, to say the very least. All right, so let's move on to the next article here. Article number 2, excuse me, PJ Media. Trump warns Iran, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Trump said Iran violated a ceasefire agreement by opening fire in the Strait of Hormuz, describing the incident as serious escalation. He claimed that multiple vessels were targeted, including a French ship and a British freighter. Iran decided to fire bullets yesterday in the Strait of Hormuz, a total violation of our ceasefire agreement. Many of them were aimed at a French ship and a freighter from the United Kingdom. That wasn't nice, was it? I don't think it was. Iran is in between a rock and a hard place. What they're stalling, and I think they were stalling to rearm with Chinese munitions, but apparently the Chinese aren't interested in prolonging this war, this conflict. At the same time, Trump suggested that Iran's own actions have effectively reinforced a U.S. blockade in the region. He said Iran recently announced that they were closing the strait, which is strange because our blockade has already closed it, obviously. And like I said previously also, that I thought they should have done the blockade earlier in the conflict, but they're helping us out without knowing, and they're the ones that will lose with the closed passage, $500 million a day, Trump went on to say. Moving on to the next headline, story number 3 here. New York Post, U.S. Navy destroyer blows a hole through an Iranian cargo ship that tried to break the Hormuz blockade, says Trump. U.S. seized an Iranian flag cargo ship after blowing a hole in its engine room when it tried to break past the Navy blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The USS Spruance destroyer intercepted Iran's Tuska cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman, taking custody of the ship after it refused warnings to stop. Today, an Iranian flag cargo ship named Tuska, nearly 900 feet long and weighing almost as much as an aircraft carrier, tried to get past our naval blockade. It did not go so well for them. Right now, U.S. Marines have custody of the vessel. The Tuska is under U.S. Treasury sanctions because of their prior history of illegal activity. We have full custody of the ship, and we're now seeing what's on board. And they tried to break through going into Iran. And so it might very well have been with weapons. I'm sure it was, because they can't maintain without rearmament. And so the American warship called out, motor vessel Tuska, vacate your engine room, vacate your engine room. We are prepared to subject you to disabling fire, a Marine can be heard saying before the ship's horn blows and a blast goes off. The seizure of the Iran-flagged vessel becomes as Trump is pushing to lock down a peace deal with Iran before a 2-week ceasefire wraps up on Tuesday. And also the Americans with satellite imagery, they can surmise exactly what vessels, especially Iranian-flagged vessels, are being loaded with weapons and trying to be shipped into Iran. Now, if it's from China, it might just be missile parts that they would have to assemble. Otherwise, China would be violating sanction agreements that were put back way, like, I think in the 80s or 90s. PJ Media, Iran pushes too far in Hormuz, and the U.S. pushes back. U.S. Navy forces intercepted and disabled a vehicle after it failed to comply with repeated warnings. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth supported the operation, and the U.S. Central Command coordinated the response, stopping the vessel before it could continue its course through the strait. The story goes on to say Iran didn't waste time pushing back. Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani accused the United States of violating international law and warned of a response. U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz pointed to Iran's own behavior in the Strait of Hormuz, making it clear that no single country controls maritime law, which goes all the way back to the 18th century. Like, if you're just joining me today, what is happening here? If you're just joining me today, having some difficulty today. And just staying awake is the real thing. I'm having trouble staying awake here. And so I want to get through all these headlines without any further delay. Fox News distress call captures tanker under fire. Iran shuts Hormuz, trapping thousands of sailors. Hundreds of commercial tankers are stranded on both sides of the Strait of Hormuz after Iran shut the critical choke point on April 18th, halting traffic and leaving crews trapped amid reports of gunfire and traumatic experiences on board. The Strait of Hormuz is considered an international waterway under international law, through which ships have the right of transit, passage. According to the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, like I said, it's been maritime admiralty law that natural waterways, features, natural, not built canals like Suez and Panama, should be open for shipping, and any nation that tries to restrict that shipping, it's considered an act of war. Roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supplies passes through the Strait of Hormuz, making it a critical choke point for global energy markets. UK maritime trade operations said Iranian gunboats opened fire on a tanker the same day, while projectiles struck a container vessel, damaging cargo. Now, they keep saying projectile. These are anti-ship missiles. They keep, the mainstream media keeps, they're trying not to talk about anti-ship missiles. And the anti-ship missiles are the missiles that are being sent from China, particularly, to Iran, and are the critical element that is going on in this conflict. The reason it started was because of ships of China sending even more sophisticated supersonic, the YJ 12s, or whether they were more sophisticated YJ-19s and YJ-20s. And my feed hung up again. Yeah, I had a day off on Friday. It wasn't really a day off from this on Friday. I had several jobs to take care of. So the my last episode was on Thursday. So sorry about it. I was going to have it was kind of a celebratory weekend. I was going to have a special report over the weekend. I just didn't get around to it. And there wasn't a lot of breaking news. I mean, there was that I easily get through these stories. But I want to take this moment to encourage you to engage the channel, like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and also share the live stream if you would. Appreciate you. Next article up here, story number 6, New York Post. Iran refuses to join latest round of peace talks as Trump sends top envoys to Pakistan, claims U.S. has, or I guess Iran claims U.S. has unrealistic demands. I don't think it's unrealistic. They're victorious. I mean, and the unrealistic, they're still, as Iran has done for 47 years, still dicking around with their right to enrichment, which is the only reason they were trying to stave off an attack just like Operation or Epic Fury for some time, and they were hoping the possession of a nuclear weapon would do so. That is their aim. That is their plan. That is their only defense against, they feel, against the West and Israel. Well, here we are. So if this is the one unnegotiable aspect is they're not going to have the right to enrich. They're not going to have the right. I mean, they have their fissile material. No one, I don't think anybody's going to go in there and get it. But they're between a rock and a hard place. So we'll see. I mean, if they want to have constant war, my thing is it's going to end up like Iraq. Where is that what you want? A no-fly zone over your country, and we will just fly over your country for years. And every time you try to put together some armament or continue research activity, you're going to get bombed. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. And the military is never going to relent. And so civilian leadership has to take a bigger role. Okay, anyway, back to the next story. Here's headline number 7. From leverage to liability, the Hormuz Strait is now Iran's biggest weakness. So for half a century, the 47 years I was just talking about, the Strait of Hormuz was Iran's weapon. Iran's implicit deterrent was geographic. Also, given the mountainous regions that surround Persia, Iran, it was almost impossible to defeat militarily. You add that to the threat to shipping in this vital waterway, and that gave them leverage, but we're looking to take it away now. For good reason. Iran's implicit deterrent was geographic, spanning from the tanker wars of the 1980s to the sanctioned standoffs of the 2010s. Almost 20% of global seaborne oil and a similar share of liquefied natural gas passes through the strait. The formula was simple. Any military confrontation that threatened the Iran regime risked a closure that would halt trade supplies, spike crude prices, bleed Western consumers, and above all, inflict pain on the United States, who was the world's largest importer. The strait served as Tehran's insurance policy and its almost powerful bargaining tool. The threat was predicated on the regime's belief that it could block everyone except its exports. The Iranian regime revealed its biggest weakness by constantly threatening to damage the global economy through shutdown of the strait. In reality, a total shutdown has the most severe impact on Iran itself. That's why I said early on in this conflict, when they closed the Strait of Hormuz, they were letting their ships go in and out. I go, why are we allowing that to happen? We should close it. And we did with a blockade, obviously. The world is a very different place from what the Iran regime thought. In 2025, U.S. crude oil production hit a new annual record of 13.6 million barrels a day, making the United States the world's largest producer, but also the biggest exporter. The United States shipped 5.2 million barrels per day of crude and 7.2 million barrels per day of petroleum products in March 2026, both global records. For the first time, America exported more petroleum than it imported by a net margin of almost 2.8 million barrels per day. Total U.S. liquids production now exceeds that of Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. On the natural gas side, U.S. LNG exports reached well over 15 billion cubic feet per day, surpassing Qatar and Australia to make the United States the world's largest liquefied natural gas exporter, while U.S. dry gas production exceeds the combined output of Russia, Iran, and China. Furthermore, the United States is also the world's largest producer of nuclear electricity at roughly 30% of global generation and a global leader in renewable energy as well. For all you environmentalists out there. Which is all, it's all good news. People don't understand the implications about what's happening and the reason that we're trying to fight the global communists, the Fabians in Fabians and the Jacobins in Europe, as well as the Maoists all over the world, and the support of the ascension of communist China, dictatorial, authoritarian, and really heathen Chinese, the communist Chinese, from allowing them to be pushed to the forefront for this new world order, so to speak. So Trump has been fighting all that in a very strategic way. Like I said, and I continually say I wasn't for this war, but now that we're in it, you have to see it to its end, and it's going to have a lot of impact to reshuffle what the hell has been going on here, and certainly stave off, uh, hopefully for generations, if not for decades, this onslaught. Fortunately, Trump, not without his foibles, is at the same time enabling the very technocracy that is going to be the downfall, and that's going to help this WEF communist global government take shape, because you're going to take human labor out of the equation. And so there will be no bargaining power for the lower classes. Beesh. Story number 8, Hezbollah human shield strategy behind Lebanon ambush bomb detonation. Macron is drawn in. Emmanuel Macron is the leader of France. He has confirmed the death of Sergeant Major Florian Montorio, demanded Lebanese authorities arrest those responsible. So what happened here is an IDF reservist was also killed, and 9 soldiers were wounded, one seriously, on the same day when an engineering vehicle drove over a bomb planted by Hezbollah. That's an IED. And again, I don't know why they kind of mix up these terms. Drove over a bomb. Weren't we calling those IEDs before? And I think because the connection with the IED and the CIA is still very fresh in our minds. Fox News. So Walsh was on the talking circuit this weekend. I could have played you a clip here from Face the Nation, but he was on Face the Nation as well as the other talks, and he was telling Trump has created the best chance in our lifetime to break Hezbollah's grip on Lebanon, whilst pointing to first ever direct talks between Lebanon and Israel in hopes of expanding Abraham Accords and getting the Lebanese to get rid of Hezbollah. But they are enclaves of Shia Muslims in Lebanon, southern Lebanon, that allowed Hezbollah to take its grip. And it's very similar to what Hamas was doing in Gaza. They're like the militant governing body over the Muslims in those areas. And the way Western democracy works is that you can't be militant and be a government. So, but that's what they do. They're militant and they're governing. And so they provide services to the people there, carrot and the stick, so to speak. But if people get out of line, they'll kill and torture their own people to keep them in line in their war against the West and Israel and all these things. And then they also lash out, as we've seen, against Israel, especially the Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And we talked about this since October 7th, is Netanyahu and the Likud regime have had this plan on the shelf, which is the all-out plan, which is getting rid of Islamic militancy that wants to get rid of Israel and get rid of it completely. So that includes Hamas, the Palestinian efforts there, Hezbollah, and of course Iran. And that's what people are talking about when there's like, oh, Trump got dragged into this conflict by Bibi, because it was the Likud's plan. Whether or not the Israelis manufactured intelligence to lead people to believe there's a good reason to attack Iran, who knows? Like I said, we're in it now, so what's the point, right? So we can't just sail away. I'd be okay with that, to sail away. But Trump's going to bomb them into the Stone Age first. And now the thing is with Hormuz. So I said, keep the blockade forever. If they want to keep firing missiles. And you know, I notice how they're sparingly using their anti-ship missiles, and they have thousands of them. You know, shoot one here and one there, harass. They're using these little boats to harass bigger ships. Why we can't have helicopters, attack helicopters, and warthogs taking out these little boats? There's got to be a way forward. PJ Media, story number 10, meet the new Iranian power behind the throne, IRGC commander, Major General Ahmad Vahidi. I just want you to get a little view of this guy here. So he's the guy. So he is IRGC commander, Major General, and he's running the show. So he's sending out civilian diplomats, but they don't have any power to conduct negotiations. They have to sit there and talk with the U.S. and Israel, or just the U.S., and then go all the way back to Iran, and then communicate with the IRGC, and the IRGC will tell them whether or not they could go for something. It's very basic, because they don't want to use open communications because they're afraid they'll be targeted. American Greatness has the headline, no, Iran isn't being honest about opening the strait. Iran and Washington claimed victory over the Strait of Hormuz, and this is just a couple days ago, but contradictory signals suggest the choke point remains contested, fragile, and far from settled. Oh, without a doubt. You know what Trump wrote over the weekend. The Strait of Hormuz is completely open and ready for business and full passage, but the naval blockade will remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran only until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete. This process should go very quickly, and that most of the points are already negotiated. Well, and this is the thing with Iran that he didn't realize also, is that what they do is they agree to something and then they come back and say, we didn't agree to that. Or we did agree to that before, and now because you did this, we don't agree to that anymore. Fars News, this is Fars, the Farsi news agency, reports Iran's conditions as follows. The strait remains closed to military vessels. The strait remains closed to vessels and cargo related to belligerent countries. Commercial vessels unrelated to belligerent countries can pass through the Iranian-approved route after they pay a toll and are approved. Vessels must coordinate their passage with Iranian forces, particularly the IRGC Navy. This implies that ships must continue to gain permission from and pay tolls to the IRGC. That's illegal. It's always been illegal. So it's extortion, and it has to be stopped. I don't know, how are these small boats continue to operate within the Persian Gulf? If you look at the vessel tracker, you see all the major vessels are in red. The little vessels are in green. Those little vessels, the majority of them are IRGC Navy. And if we could see them buzzing around the Persian Gulf, we could certainly take them out, right? I mean, if we can do that, right? If we could do that to drug runners in the Caribbean, we certainly could do that to these. Maybe we were worried about shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. In any case, in related news, New York Post, glam Iranian businesswoman busted at LAX, charged with helping regime sell drones, bombs, and ammo. Glamorous Iranian businesswoman with a U.S. green card was arrested at the Los Angeles International Airport for allegedly trafficking arms on the behalf of Tehran. Shamin Mafi, 41, of Woodland Hills, was taken into custody on Saturday night and charged with brokering deals for Iranian drones, bombs, and millions of rounds of ammunition bound for Sudan, according to the Office of the U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California. Mafi was allegedly conducted the arms deals while in close contact with Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security, which provided instruction and funds for her to open a business in the U.S. to operate out of. I don't know if it's a shell business or she actually hung a sign that said guns, bombs, and drones. PJ Media chimes in on the story. U.S. arrests Iranian arms trafficker at LAX. Authorities continue to identify Iranian regime assets in the United States as that regime refuses to make any peace deal with the great Satan, America. The latest arrest was an Iranian woman who obtained lawful residency, even though it turns out she was trafficking arms for the murderous mullahs back in Iran. Shamin Mafi became a lawful permanent citizen of the United States in 2016. But since our immigration system has long been broken and many foreign criminals and terrorists have slipped through the cracks, it is not entirely shocking to find out that she remained loyal to the dictatorial regime. She escaped instead of the free. And if you look at her, it's like, and you looked at the daughters of the IRGC commanders and the mullahs and what have you, they're all in Western clothes. You know, they don't keep their heads covered. No more beard police, I guess, in Iran. Iran used to be as bad as the Taliban. They used to go around measuring men's beards to make sure that they were long enough, short enough. I don't know. I could care. I'm just getting a little fed up with this now that they brought this upon themselves, and then they want to keep negotiating, and they keep try to get out of the negotiations. It's been 2 weeks, supposed to be a 2-week ceasefire. He extended it to get these talks done, and now they don't want to talk. So resume hostilities. Fox News, 2 U.S. Embassy personnel killed in accident in Mexico, ambassador says. U.S. Ambassador to Mexico Ronald Johnson announced the incident on social media on Sunday. We have no details. We don't know if they're American personnel, American citizens, or if they're local personnel. I think it happened in Chihuahua. And we don't know if it was an attack on the embassy. It looks like it would be a soft target. But they said it's an accident, so who knows? Their car was accidentally blown up. So to get to the crux of the matter, PJ Media has this story number 15. WEF, that's a World Economic Forum, promotes Communist China's aggressively military-focused 5-year plan. The World Economic Forum closed out March with a nauseating, gushingly enthusiastic promotion of the genocidal Chinese Communist Party's 5-year plan. What WEF is not going to tell you is how great the emphasis is on the military and asymmetric warfare in China now. The basis of this story is, and I'm going to get to some more nauseating aspects of it in just a second, is that the rich elite of the world promoted, funded, and organized China's ascension, starting back in the 50s. And now it's here, and they want China to be the model for the world government, because you have to have socialism, because this is the checkmate on human labor. Once the technology comes out, you're not going to need humans to do anything. And what are you going to do with them? Right? Because they're obviously going to protest their future. They should be now, as I said before. But they're not. So you have to understand, and it didn't make sense to me at first, but you have to look at the rich backing communism, socialism. You see, socialism was in fact the controlled opposition to the wealthy elite. See, when the wealthy elite took over the nation state and supplanted the monarchies, they wanted to devise a plan where they would never be unseated, usurped in any other way. So obviously they know what the opposition would be. It would be an anti-capitalist opposition. So what did they do? They opened their storefront, put their flag out front, said, we're anti-capitalist. Come on over. We're going to tell you how to fight the capitalists. But it's been controlled opposition the whole time. Because you don't think communist governments work with big business? Of course they do. There's an only difference is that, you know, communist governments like China, they own 51% of all business in their country. But the Communist Party leaders are the CEOs of yesteryear. It's just they put on a different lapel pin, but they're still in charge, right? Because check it out. So if you're a Politburo member, right, and the Communist Party, which runs the state, and the state owns half of all companies, well, they're still owners of companies. They own, obviously, with the rest of the Politburo in the state, they own half the company. So there's no difference, really. They own a controlling share of the company. They just have to make decisions in a form of councilism instead of versus, and it's not that much different, the Politburo or the boardroom. You know what I mean? And big business hates democracy because there are too many people that you have to listen to. That's why they like authoritarian regimes, because you just have to deal with one person, the authoritarian in charge of the regime, or the regime itself, rather than the multiplicity of a population of a country in a democracy. The Federalist has the headline, story number 16, U.S. UK lawmakers finally scrutinize China's use of cultural associations as communist fronts. Really? Lawmakers in the U.S. and UK have taken steps to demand greater accountability from organizations suspected of advancing Beijing's agenda. They wrote a strongly worded letter. Well, that's what it seems like. Especially the United States, should be immediately disbanded. But there's an entire network of NGOs and or student unions that are conducting espionage, and the litany is large. The Chinese Communist Party's United Front Work Department has long conducted intelligence gathering and influence operations abroad by embedding itself in seemingly benign overseas organizations. These groups often operate in plain sight, shaping public opinion, supporting pro-Beijing policies, and sometimes interfering in election processes while enjoying the legal protections and tax benefits afforded to nonprofit organizations in open societies. Open Society Foundation. You see how leftists work? They use free society to infiltrate and embed, right? And then you can never get rid of them. You know, there's a recent Jeopardy champion, the game show Jeopardy, and he is a Chinese, I don't think he's a Chinese national, but he's Chinese. And he calls himself a bureaucrat. Well, because he works for the government, the United States government. Next story up here, headline number 17. Fox News, Chicago Public Schools declare May 1st, May Day, as Day of Civil Actions for Students. Chicago schools may help students attend civil engagement events despite May 1 still being a full school day. That's the issue. How does a teachers union, people associated with public schools, say the best way to serve students is to organize a day where they leave school? Basically a skip day, they blow off their classes. Are they not going to schedule classes that day? Chicago Public Schools and the Chicago Teachers Union will consider May 1st a day of civil action. Why? First of all, why is civil action important? It's not important. Not when you're supposed to be in school learning reading, writing, and arithmetic. And civil action. And again, Chicago's the hotbed of this kind of garbage. You need to know things before you can go out and convince anybody of anything. But they don't. They want to dumb down leftists and go out there and bang people over the head with Howard Zinn textbooks. The CTU pushed a resolution last month to designate May 1st, otherwise known as May Day or International Workers' Day, as a day of civil action in defense of public education, a day off for teachers and students. And also, I want to point out here is that May Day is a socialist day. So it's, in its very nature, is political. Why not give kids a day off on Flag Day or the 4th of July or whatever? I think the 4th of July is a holiday. If we still want to have democracy in the midterms this November, public schools that provide our students with quality education and unions to defend workers' rights, then it is up to every Chicagoan to stand up for what we believe in and show the authoritarian billionaire in Washington that when he breaks every rule, we're not going to go along with business as usual, said CTU Vice President Jackson Potter and state. That's overtly political, and this person should be fired. Defend workers' rights. That's socialist. It's not up to children, students. This isn't college, right? College, presumably, the students are adults. They can make decisions for themselves. Just makes me so mad. All right, let's get on to this Justin Fairfax thing briefly. So we all know, if you don't know, you should know. The understanding is that Eric Swalwell, congressman of California, was protected for his predatory behavior, supposedly. I call it honeypot. So what they do is they have sex operations, and then they keep these women on ice, and they go, if we ever need you, we're going to call on you to say that consensual sex you just had with a congressman is unconsensual rape or sexual assault. And they all come out all at the same time, right when he's running for governor and right after the Democrats told him to step aside. And you don't want to say no to the Democratic Party because they'll ruin you. But this is what I'm getting to now. Now, if you take that as our presumption, then this is going to bother you even more. Justin Fairfax couldn't find a job or even get legal clients after sex assault scandal. He couldn't find a job really after. He was ruined by sexual assault scandal. ABC 7, ex-Virginia Lieutenant Governor Fairfax faced sexual assault allegations before murder-suicide. Now, these are very old allegations. Back in 2018. How long ago was that? Justin Fairfax was on top of the world, a rising political star in Virginia, newly elected lieutenant governor and making history as only the second African-American ever elected statewide. Within a year, it all unraveled. How did it unravel? This is from 2019. Justin Fairfax, again, ABC News. Justin Fairfax seeks probe of assault allegations, reiterates sex with accusers was consensual. Not with the Democratic operative, it's not. Speaking at a news conference, Fairfax again said the allegations are untrue and sexual encounters had been with women that he had with women were consensual. I believe he was married, so. Vanessa Tyson and Meredith Watson leveled their accusations against Fairfax in February. Tyson said Fairfax forced her to perform oral sex in 2004. Forced her to perform oral sex. I think if you didn't want to put a guy's dick in your mouth, there are ways to make him pay if he's forcing you to do that. Watson, Meredith Watson, says Fairfax raped her in 2000 when both were students at Duke University. Okay, so let's put this in a little bit of context here. So 2000 and 2004, these happened. More than 15 years later, these people resurface right when he's at the peak of his career. Now, why? Just like Eric Swalwell. The women leveled their accusations against Fairfax at a moment when he seemed poised to ascend to the governor's post. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam was facing numerous calls to resign after a racist photo showing a person in blackface and another in Ku Klux Klan costume was found on his medical school yearbook page. Something was going on there. I know Ralph Northam was a darling of the Democratic Party. Why did the Democrats want to destroy him? This is the issue. They destroyed him and drove him to suicide and murder. Forget about what happened later, because it all resulted from this. Now, you could say he lacked his judgment to go and spend time with these women. But they could get you at any time. He was still in college when that one woman said that he raped her. And over a decade later, they come out of the woodwork and, no, he raped me, when he was poised to the pinnacle of his career. That's how they control you. They probably told him, hey, don't run for governor or whatever. I don't know what they had in mind, or probably had a sit down with him. And even the people that are being controlled don't realize the levers, because you don't remember you had sex with some girl 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You don't remember. You're not like, oh, they're going to come out of the woodwork. They're Democratic. They're long gone as far as you're concerned, but not to the Democrats. They're ripe for the picking. And so they caused this guy all this turmoil. He ends up, whether it was related or not related, did they trigger him to do so? Maybe, maybe not. But they sent those wheels in motion. Now, the other thing was this KSLA 12 news, 8 children killed in Shreveport, mass shooting identified by coroner's office. I'm not going to get really too much in the story. It's a really horrendous, this heinous act of killing children. But the Democrats always love that. The school shooting, all the shootings. You're never going to get people to want to get rid of firearms unless you kill children. So this guy, again, was ex-military. And who knows how he was triggered? How can you be triggered to shoot your own children? Or to shoot children? What possibly could be the motive? Elkin's motive remains unclear at this time. What was Adam Lanza's motive? What was any school shooter's motive? Uvalde shooter, what was his motive? The Parkland shooter, what was his motive? Oh, none? All these shootings, we don't have any motive. From Columbine till now, we don't have any motive. But there is a motive for someone to get people to shoot children. And we see it on the TV every day and in legislative proposals by Democrats, including my own Chris Murphy. I just want to wedge this in here. NYPD investigating reckless drive racing, street takeover in Queens, because it was in the news this morning. It's lawlessness, shouldn't be tolerated. I have them even in my town. Story number 23, Just the News, 3 anti-Trump immigration protesters face trial after federal judges refuses to dismiss case. Good. Federal judge has ruled that 3 defendants facing charges in their role in a protest in Spokane, Washington, go to trial. For law enforcement arrested dozens of people after a protest at the facility resulted in demonstrators blocking agents from leaving and allegedly damaging transport vehicles. Indicted 9 of the protesters a month later on conspiracy charges. Of course it's a conspiracy. Led by Democrats. And it's not partisan. These people broke the law, attacked law enforcement at the urging of Democrats and the Democrat Party. Story number 24, PJ Media. Were almost 10% of U.S. born babies in 2023 anchor babies? Yes, they were. So many illegal aliens enter our country to give birth and have their babies declared American citizens under the Biden administration that anchor babies reportedly represented almost 10% in American births in 2023. If that figure is true, it's certainly startling. I mean, you'd have to do the math. You let in 10 million, was it 12 million people under Joe Biden? How many of those people are going to have babies? So out of 10 million, how many have babies? Is it 10% of all births? Possible. Just the news again, Trump's historic rating with seniors boosted by tax deductions. So I'm not going to get into the one big beautiful bill added up to $6,000 per qualifying individual, $12,000 for married couples on the top of the existing standard and additional senior deductions. So people, when they start getting their refund checks, should be happy, but it's all muddled with the Iran war and rising gas prices and all these other things. And now, as I explained before, that he's got to pay back all these tariff dividends, that he won't be able to send out tariff dividend checks before the election as he was planning. It's all rigged by the establishment, whether Republican, Democrat, they're trying to kill populism for the simple reason is populism works. Trump's agenda would work if it was allowed, but it wasn't allowed. He got impeached during his first term twice, and one of those impeachments is going to be thrown out. Unfairly, because he was persecuted unfairly. And it's the same thing with his tariff decision. The administration doesn't have the right to tariff. Come on. Just the news, Trump economy, retail sales, and housing suggest a resilient consumer. But the bigger question is whether real inflation-adjusted spending is holding up. The consumer still looks resilient, though more selective and cautious than a year ago. So they're still spending, but cautiously so. And going back to the tariffs also, that was good for America. The idea that Americans were being penalized, they're not. They're exporters, importers are being paralyzed, right? And again, it's against China. This is a war. This is a fifth generational war against China. And for the Supreme Court to go, no, U.S. doesn't get to fight China. And the administration doesn't get to decide how it fights China. It's one of the biggest Supreme Court travesties in this nation's history. Washington Times, FBI has evidence backing Trump's 2020 stolen elections claim. Really? FBI Director Kash Patel said Sunday the Bureau has gathered evidence supporting President Trump's claim that the 2020 election was stolen, but he is not ready to share any of the information because he does not want to get ahead of the investigation. We have the information that backs President Trump's claim, Patel said. I can't get ahead of the DOJ and the president, but President Trump speaks truthfully when he says that. Of course, we all know that. We all know that, and the fact that Democrat states are clinging on to their mail-in ballots like that's their only chance of victory. If you're so convinced that the American public wants Democrats back in power, wants Kamala Harris, then get rid of mail-in ballots. Are there really that many people that can't get in a car and go down the polling station? Come on. Fox News, NRCC reporting records 47.1 million quarter, record $28.1 million raised in March. GOP buoyed by probes into Dems Act Blue TSA security lines proving costly. Yeah, and hear from the Federalist. Republican committee raises record funds, but voter motivation remains a big problem. Whoops. I thought I had X with it. NRCC's record haul comes as congressional Republicans continue to lag Democrats in generic preference polls. The problem is the people that are really connected, the people that have money and donate, to political causes, they're smarter than the average citizen. So when you're polling average citizens, you get, it's like polling people that don't like football, which team they like. They go, I like the blue team. They don't know. Most people don't know anything about politics and what political policy is and whether or not it's feasible, because as a politician, you have to outline a way that you would achieve these policy results. And people don't understand that. They're just like, oh yeah, free buses. That sounds great. And you know what happens there. All right, this is an interesting story, post-millennial. Story number 30, first openly gay DC police union chairman arrested on child sex crimes. Yuck. Openly gay Washington, D.C. police lieutenant and union leader has been arrested on child sex crimes charges after he attempted to meet a 15-year-old boy. So what's happening here is that this guy, see, sexual perversion is sexual perversion. And why you have, and I'm not saying about all homosexual men or women or whether they are sexual predators. You can't say that they all are, but you know, it's just if you have a sexual perversion, where do you draw the line on getting yourself off? So this guy thought he was talking to a 15-year-old boy. Turns out it was undercover. He went to meet the 15-year-old boy. Okay, so it's, you know, it's not like a young man. It was an 18 or 17. Not that that's okay. 15-year-old boy is still, it's a teenager, but it's still pretty effing young. I mean, we had those stories about the gay couple that adopted children and were pimping them out for child sex. Yeah, that happened in Georgia. Sick. Whatever's anybody's predilection is, I mean, just don't, you can't prey on other people's children. You know, that's the whole thing between trans is like, oh, what gender are you? What does that mean? Well, who do you like to have sex with? It's like you're talking to children. Come on. Quickly, zero hedge psychedelic stocks soar after Trump order. RBC says commercialization path could accelerate. And if you've ever taken psychedelics, they have great spiritual and psychological value. In ancient times, people used to have I was talking to my wife about it the other day. When young men would come of age, vision quest. So you go out with the medicine man, and you take peyote or some hallucinogenic drug, and then you have visions and hallucinations and whatever, and then you're supposed to take that experience with you the rest of your life. So it has, and now they're proving that it helps people with deep psychological issues. Good. I think it's helped me, but I'm not going to advocate that for people that are weak-minded. Probably couldn't handle it. New York Times, influencers are spinning nicotine as natural health hack. So nicotine is different than the tar that comes with cigarette smoking. So nicotine itself apparently has some good health benefits. There's a compound that can reverse Alzheimer's, increase cognitive function, and potentially help you live longer. I'm all for that. Zero Hedge story number 33. Assisted suicide is the logical outcome of government-controlled medical care? No doubt. Legalization of MAID, if you didn't know what MAID is medical assist in dying in Canada. The legalization of MAID has brought to the fore some disturbing moral calculations, particularly with its expansion in 2019 to include individuals whose deaths aren't reasonable foreseeable. So people that aren't about to die, but are suffering still the same. This change opened the floodgates for people with disabilities to apply to die rather than survive on meager benefit. Euthanasia represents a cynical endgame in social provisioning with the brutal logic of late-stage capitalism. More from Just the News, story number 34. Orban defeat pauses Europe's election of nationalist far-right leaders, but trend lines are unclear. So if you didn't know, Viktor Orban, who was a darling of Trump and was certainly one of the last nationalists in Europe, was anti-war with Russia, et cetera, anti-immigration, et cetera. I told you he wouldn't win. There's no way they were going to there was a weakness there. There was no way they weren't going to exploit it, which they did. But I think the trend of nationalist, populist nationalism or conservatism isn't going to wane. Let's not forget what we're fighting against, and that is socialism. What is socialism? Socialism is the controlled opposition to unbridled capitalism. By that I mean the robber baron elite. So people that know that monopolies are unfair, yet they seek them anyway. They seek to exploit the consumer, and all the stuff that we've seen go on throughout the ages continues to this day. So that's what the government's real role should be keeping corporations in check. Not necessarily overtaxing them, but by not allowing them to grow so big and become monopolies. That's the whole antitrust, the trust busting of Teddy Roosevelt. Also from Zero Hedge, cracks appear in climate consensus as Germany's energy minister admits renewables are ruining the country. This is another socialist claptrap. It's like to get the environmentalists on board to this new world order myth that humans are endangering the planet and you have to give up cheap energy and breathing and driving and all these other things because you're damaging the earth. You're a pollutant. Popular mechanics, the world is running out of people and the next 40 years could determine the fate of humanity. Global population drop is in motion, and that's what they always wanted. Economists believe the diminishing birth rate will have a detrimental impact on labor supply. We won't need it, asshole, because they're going to be robots. The reason for our impending global population shortage is attributed to falling birth rates because of increased living standards. So you say. That's not true. There's also some biological issues going on. And then you have the whole transgender thing. They don't want you to have children, and it's all over the place. Not to have children because you're a pollutant. Why? Because humans won't be needed. Associated Press, a humanoid robot sprints past the human half marathon world record in the Beijing race. Humanoid robot that won a half marathon race for robots in Beijing. They didn't run against people. On Sunday, ran faster than the human world record in a show of Chinese technological leaps. The winner from Honor, a Chinese smartphone maker, completed the 21-kilometer race in 50 minutes and 26 seconds. And this, again, is reported through the Chinese press, so who knows? And there's more. New York Times, the killer robots are coming. The battlefield will never look the same, from the New York Times. This is our last story, story number 49. Ukraine is using unmanned ground vehicles armed with bombs, guns, or rockets to carry out attacks and help its soldiers out, keep its soldiers it has left out of harm's way. Essentially little green wagons. They look like something you might buy at a garden store to move bags of soil around, but each carried 66 pounds of explosive. As the remotely controlled vehicles approached the enemy soldiers, an aerial drone flew in and dropped a bomb to help clear the path. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. And thank you for Ronaldus Magnanimous for chiming in. All right, thanks for joining me today. I'm here every day, Monday through Friday, live stream at 10 a.m. Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, Locals, and X. Thanks for joining me today. Got through about 39 headlines in about an hour and what? An hour and 6 minutes or so, so we did okay. Thanks again for joining me. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Thank you. Like I said, didn't have enough coffee, didn't get enough sleep, so I was dragging a little bit, but we made it through. Thanks for joining me. I will see you mañana. Remember, you're under attack psychologically and biologically, so stay hip to that trick. Thanks again for joining me. Respect.
You can't handle the truth. These people are crazy.